Have you ever had one of those nights that divides your life into before and after? A moment so unexpected, so earth-shattering that everything you thought you knew suddenly shifts beneath your feet. This is the story of the night my supposedly straight roommate reached across the darkness, pulled me into his bed and whispered three words. That changed everything. I need you. What happened next wasn't just about attraction or desire. It was about two people finding the courage to be honest about who they really were and discovering that sometimes the person you've been looking for has been right there all along. This is our story. This is how everything changed. The apartment always smelled like coffee and old books, with a hint of whatever cologne Jake had worn that day, something woodsy and warm that made my chest tighten every time I caught it in the hallway. We'd been roommates for 8 months and I'd been quietly, desperately in love with him for approximately 7 months and 29 days. I'm Adrian, 25, a graphic designer working remotely for a tech startup that paid just enough to cover my half of the rent in our cramped 2-bedroom in the heart of Chicago. I came out when I was 19, had my share of dating disasters, and had finally reached that comfortable place where I knew who I was and what I wanted. Or so I thought, until Jake Mitchell walked into my life at a mutual friend's housewarming party, mentioned he was looking for a roommate, and completely upended everything I thought I understood about myself. Jake was the kind of guy who turned heads without trying. 61, athletic build from his years playing college baseball, dark hair that was always slightly messy in that effortlessly attractive way, and these piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through whatever walls you'd built around yourself. But it wasn't just his looks, though. Trust me, those didn't hurt. It was the way he laughed, throwing his whole body into it, the way he'd absently run his hand through his hair when he was thinking, the way he'd leave little sticky notes around the apartment with terrible jokes just to make me smile. Morning sunshine, Jake called from the kitchen. As I shuffled out of my bedroom that Thursday morning, still half asleep and definitely not prepared for human interaction, I grunted something that might have been a greeting and made a beeline for the coffee pot, only to find Jake had already poured me a cup. Black, no sugar, exactly how I liked it. These small gestures were the tiny paper cuts that slowly bled my heart dry. Big presentation today? He asked, leaning against the counter in his navy blue button-down that made his eyes impossibly brighter. He worked in marketing for a sports equipment company, which meant he got to look unfairly attractive in business casual every day. Yeah, the Henderson account, I said, wrapping both hands around the warm mug. 3 months of work comes down to a 30 in nut pitch. Jake's face lit up with that genuine enthusiasm that made him so dangerously likable. You're going to kill it. Your designs are incredible, Adrian. They'd be idiots not to see that. My heart did that stupid fluttering thing it always did when he said my name. I'd long ago given up trying to stop it. Thanks, I managed, taking a too large gulp of coffee to hide behind the mug. What about you? Still dealing with the product launch chaos? Don't remind me, he groaned, but he was smiling, I think. I've had about 4 hours of sleep total this week. But hey, after tomorrow's launch event, I'm taking the weekend completely off. Was thinking maybe we could finally try that new Thai place on Morgan Street, the one with the rooftop seating. This was the dangerous dance we'd been doing for months, casual hangouts that felt like dates but weren't, comfortable domesticity that felt like a relationship but couldn't be. Jake, identified as straight, had a girlfriend for 3 years in college, went on occasional dates with women he met through work or friends, talked about wanting a family someday with the kind of certainty that left no room for interpretation. And yet there were moments, glances that lasted a heartbeat too long, his hand on my shoulder that lingered, the way he'd sometimes look at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, something unreadable flickering across his face, but I'd convinced myself I was seeing what I wanted to see, projecting my feelings onto innocent friendships gestures. Sure, I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. Sounds good, Jake pushed off from the counter, grabbing his messenger bag from the hook by the door. He paused, turned back, and did something he'd never done before. He reached out and squeezed my arm, his hand warm through the thin fabric of my t-shirt. Hey, he said, his voice softer. Good luck today, not that you need it. Then he was gone, leaving me standing in our kitchen with my coffee and my racing heart and the lingering warmth of his touch on my arm. Chapter 2: Cracks in the Foundation. The presentation went well, better than well, actually. The Henderson team loved the rebrand concepts, and by noon I had a signed contract and praise from my boss that would probably translate to a decent bonus. I should have been ecstatic. Instead, I spent the afternoon staring at my computer screen, thinking about Jake's hand on my arm and wondering if I was slowly going insane. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya, my best friend since college and the only person who knew the full pathetic extent of my Jake situation. Maya, how'd it go? Me, nailed it. They loved everything. Maya, that's my boy celebrating tonight. Me, Jake mentioned dinner this weekend. Maya, Adrian, honey, we need to talk about this. Maya, you can't keep torturing yourself like this. I stared at her messages, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. What was I supposed to say? That I knew she was right but couldn't seem to stop myself from hopping, that every rational part of my brain screamed that I was setting myself up for heartbreak, but my stupid, stubborn heart refused to listen. Me, I know, I'm working on it. Maya, you've been working on it for 6 months. Maybe it's time to actually move out, get some distance. Me, maybe, but even as I typed it, I knew I wouldn't. Not yet, not while there was still this comfortable rhythm to our lives, this easy intimacy that felt too precious to walk away from, even if it was slowly killing me. That evening I got home before Jake, which was unusual. The apartment felt different without his presence, emptier, quieter, like a stage waiting for its main actor. I ordered Chinese takeout, poured myself a glass of wine, and settled onto the couch with my laptop, determined to work on some freelance projects and absolutely not think about my roommate. I managed about 45 minutes of productivity before I heard his key in the lock. Adrian, Jake's voice carried from the entryway, but something was off. The usual brightness was missing, replaced by something strained. In here, I called, sitting up straighter. Jake appeared in the living room doorway, and I immediately knew something was wrong. His tie was loosened, his hair more disheveled than usual, and his eyes had a distant, troubled look I'd never seen before. Hey, I said carefully, you okay? He stood there for a long moment, just looking at me with that unreadable expression again. Then he crossed to the couch and dropped down beside me, not at the other end like usual, but close enough that our thighs almost touched. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice low and rough, and I don't know how. My heart started hammering against my ribs. 1,000 scenarios ran through my mind, none of them good. He was moving out, he'd met someone. He'd somehow figured out how I felt and was about to let me down gently. Okay, I managed, setting my laptop aside. You can tell me anything, you know that. Jake leaned forward, bracing his elbows on his knees, staring at his clasped hands. In profile, his jaw was tight, a muscle jumping beneath the skin. I went on a date last night, he began, and my stomach dropped like a stone. With Sarah from accounting. Nice girl, pretty funny, everything I should want. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, just waited for the blow I knew was coming. And the whole time, Jake continued, his voice barely above a whisper, the whole time I was sitting across from her at dinner, all I could think about was whether you'd eaten and if you were home alone, and how much I wished I was there instead of on this date that I should have wanted to be on. The world seemed to tilt slightly on its axis. Jake, I'm not finished, he cut me off. Still not looking at me. After dinner, she invited me back to her place, and Adrian, I couldn't do it. I walked her to her door, said good night, and came home. Came home to our apartment, hoping you'd still be awake so I could just see you. My breath caught in my throat. What are you saying? Finally, he turned to face me, and the raw vulnerability in his eyes made my chest ache. I'm saying I don't know what I am anymore, he said. I'm saying that for the past 3 months I've been lying to myself, trying to convince myself that what I feel when I'm around you is just friendship, just roommate stuff. But Adrian, I can't stop thinking about you, and it's scaring the hell out of me. The silence that followed Jake's confession stretched between us like a tightrope. dangerous, thrilling. Impossible to turn back from once you started to cross. How long, I asked, my voice barely steady, how long have you felt this way? Jake ran both hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration and confusion that I'd seen 100 times but never understood until now. I don't know exactly when it started, he admitted. Maybe it was always there, just under the surface. Do you remember that night about 3 months ago when we stayed up until 4:00 in the morning talking about everything and nothing? You were sitting in that ratty armchair wrapped in that gray blanket, talking about your theory that every person is just a collection of the books they've read and the songs they've loved. And I remember thinking, he broke off, shaking his head, thinking what? I pressed my heart in my throat, thinking that I'd never felt more comfortable with another person in my entire life. That I could sit there and listen to you talk forever and never get bored, and then you laughed at something and the sound of it just, I don't know, Adrian, it hit me differently, made me feel different. I remembered that night. God, did I remember. It was the night I'd stopped pretending to myself that what I felt was just a crush, the night I'd realized I was in serious trouble. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. Because I was terrified, Jake said simply. Because I've spent 27 years being one thing, knowing who I was, and suddenly I didn't know anymore. Because every time I tried to name what I was feeling, my brain would shut down, throw up every defense mechanism it had. I went on dates with women, tried to force myself back into that familiar pattern, told myself I was just confused or stressed, but you couldn't, I finished softly. No, he agreed finally, meeting my eyes again. I couldn't, because every single time all roads led back to you. The air between us felt electric, charged with possibility and fear in equal measure. I wanted to reach for him, to close the distance that was both physical and emotional, but something held me back. Years of protecting my heart, the fear of misreading the moment, the terror of losing what we already had if this went wrong. Jake, I said carefully, I need you to understand something. I care about you more than I probably should, but I can't be someone's experiment. I can't be the guy you explore this with and then decide it was just a phase or a moment of confusion. I've been there before and I won't do it again. Something fierce flashed in Jake's eyes. You think that's what this is? I don't know what this is, I admitted. You've identified as straight your whole life. Now you're having feelings for a man, for me, and you're scared and confused, and I get that. But Jake, if you're not sure, I'm not sure about a lot of things, Jake interrupted, shifting closer on the couch. I'm not sure what label fits me anymore. I'm not sure how to navigate this, or what it means for my future, or how to tell my family, or any of the thousand other things that keep spiraling through my head. But Adrian, I am absolutely sure about one thing. What I feel for you is real. It's not confusion, it's not an experiment, it's the realest thing I felt in my entire life. My breath hitched. We were close enough now that I could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes, could smell that woodsy cologne that had been driving me slowly insane for months. What do you want from me? I whispered. Jake's hand moved, hovering in the space between us, trembling slightly. I want to see where this goes. I want to be honest about what I'm feeling instead of running from it. He swallowed hard, I want to know if you feel it too, or if I've completely misread everything between us. A laugh bubbled up from my chest, slightly hysterical. Jake, I've been half in love with you since the day you moved in. I've been dying quietly for months, watching you date other people, convincing myself that what we had was just friendship. Because that's all it could ever be. Half in love? Jake asked, a small smile tugging at his lips despite the intensity of the moment. Okay, fine, completely, hopelessly, embarrassingly in love, I corrected. Happy? Actually, yeah, Jake said, and his smile widened into something genuine and beautiful. I really am. He closed the distance between us, his hand finally making contact, cupping my face with a tenderness that made my eyes sting with sudden tears. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, and I couldn't help but lean into his touch, savoring this moment I dreamed about but never truly believed would happen. Adrian, he murmured, and my name had never sounded like that before, like a prayer, like a promise. Can I? Yes, I breathed before he could finish the question, but Jake didn't Kiss me, not yet. Instead, he rested his forehead against mine, our breaths mingling in the small space between us, letting the anticipation build until it was almost unbearable. I'm scared, he admitted, his voice raw with honesty. I'm scared I'll mess this up, scared I don't know what I'm doing, scared of what this means for everything. I'm scared too, I confessed, but Jake, I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. Something in his expression shifted, relief, determination, maybe a little bit of wonder, and then finally he closed the last inch between us and kissed me. It wasn't explosive or desperate or any of the dramatic things I'd imagined. It was soft, questioning, tentative too. People finding their way to each other in the dark. His lips were warm and gentle, and when I kissed him back, letting him know it was okay, that I wanted this too, I felt him relax into it, deepening the kiss with growing confidence. Time seemed to suspend itself. There was no before or after, no complicated feelings or uncertain futures, just this moment, just us, just the overwhelming rightness of finally being honest about what we meant to each other. When we finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Jake didn't pull away. Instead, he wrapped his arms around me, pulling me against his chest, and I could feel his heart hammering against my cheek. Stay tonight, he murmured into my hair. Not, I mean, we don't have to do anything. I just want you close. I've wanted you close for so long. Okay, I agreed, my voice muffled against his shirt. Okay, we stayed like that on the couch for a long time, holding each other as the city lights flickered on outside our window and the world continued spinning around us. And for the first time in months, the weight I'd been carrying, the weight of unspoken feelings and impossible hopes, began to lift. Whatever came next, whatever challenges we'd face, at least we'd face them honestly. Together, that night marked the end of the before and the beginning of everything else. The next few days existed in a strange, beautiful limbo. Jake and I didn't define what was happening between us. We just let it unfold naturally, tentatively, like learning a new language with someone who was equally fluent and equally lost. We'd spend evenings on the couch, closer than we used to sit, sometimes talking, sometimes just existing in comfortable silence. Jake would reach for my hand absently while watching TV, threading our fingers together like he'd been doing it forever. I'd wake up to good morning texts, even though he was just in the next room. Small messages that said thinking about you without actually saying it, but we hadn't kissed again since that first night, hadn't pushed beyond those small intimacies. It felt like we were both holding our breath, waiting for something, permission, courage, the right moment to take the next step. Friday evening arrived with an early autumn chill that made our apartment feel especially cozy. Jake's product launch had been a success and we'd gone to that Thai restaurant on Morgan Street to celebrate, both his win and mine from earlier in the week. The rooftop had been beautiful, strings of lights overhead creating a canopy of stars. The city spread out around us like a promise to new beginnings, Jake had said, raising his glass of wine, his eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my stomach flip. To being brave enough to take them, I'd replied, clinking my glass against his. Now back at the apartment, pleasantly buzzed from wine and good food, we were doing the dishes together. It was such a domestic scene, Jake washing me, drying, the warm kitchen light making everything feel golden and safe. I talked to Maya today, I said, putting away a plate. She invited us to her Halloween party next month, both of us together, Jake's hands stilled in the soapy water. As together if you want, I said carefully, no pressure. I know this is all new and coming out. If that's even what you want to do is a huge deal, we can just go as roommates or not go at all. Jake was quiet for a long moment, staring at the plate in his hands like it held answers to questions he hadn't figured out how to ask yet. I want people to know, he said finally, surprising me. Not everyone, not right away, but Maya knows about us, right? About how you feel, feel, present tense, I confirmed with a small smile. And yeah, she knows. She's been my sounding board through all of this. She won't judge you, Jake. She's incredibly kind. Then yeah, Jake decided, meeting my eyes. Let's go together, as together. Whatever that looks like by then, the casual bravery of it, the way he was Facing this fear head-on instead of running from it made my chest ache with affection and pride. Okay, I said softly. Together that night I couldn't sleep. My mind was too full of everything. The evening we'd shared, the warmth of Jake's hand and mine as we'd walked home, the look in his eyes when he'd said he wanted people to know about us. It felt too good, too perfect, like a dream I might wake up from at any moment. Around 3:00 in the morning, I gave up on sleep entirely. I grabbed my sketchbook from the nightstand, old habits from my art school days that I'd never quite shaken, and padded quietly to the living room. Not wanting to disturb Jake with my restlessness, the apartment was dark except for the blue-white glow of street lights filtering through the windows. I curled up in that ratty armchair Jake had mentioned, the gray blanket wrapped around my shoulders, and started sketching without any particular plan. My hand seemed to have ideas of its own, though, and after a few minutes I realized I was drawing Jake's face, the curve of his smile, the way his hair fell across his forehead, the intensity in his eyes when he looked at me. Couldn't sleep either, I jerked at the sound of Jake's voice, nearly dropping my sketchbook. He was standing in the hallway wearing just a pair of sweatpants, his hair sleepum and adorably disheveled. Sorry, I said, closing the sketchbook quickly. Did I wake you? No, I've been awake for a while, Jake admitted, crossing to the couch and sitting down. Brain won't shut off. Want to talk about it? Jake was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful in the dim light. I called my sister tonight. After you went to bed, my heart jumped. Jake was incredibly close to his sister Emily. She was 2 years older, lived in Boston with her husband and their toddler, and from everything Jake had told me, she was his favorite person in the world. How did it go? I asked carefully. I didn't tell her everything, Jake said. But I told her there was someone, that I had feelings for someone, and it was complicated and I was scared. What did she say? A small smile tugged at Jake's lips. She said she'd been waiting for me to figure it out for months. Apparently the way I talk about you made it pretty obvious something was going on, even if I was too stubborn to see it myself. I felt warmth bloom in my chest. She knew about me, not the details, but yeah, she knew. And Adrian, Jake's voice got softer. She said she was happy for me, said whoever made me sound that alive when I talked about them was obviously special, and gender didn't matter even a little bit. Tears pricked at my eyes unexpectedly. She sounds amazing. She is, Jake agreed. And she wants to meet you properly, I mean. As more than just my roommate. I'd like that, I said honestly. Jake stood up from the couch and crossed to where I sat, gently taking the sketchbook from my lap and setting it aside. Then he held out his hand. Come here, he said softly, please. I took his hand and let him pull me to my feet, the blanket falling away. We stood there in the dark living room, close enough to touch, and I could see Jake warring with something internal, fear and want and uncertainty all playing across his features. Adrian, he began, then stopped, frustration flickering in his eyes. I don't have the words. I don't know how to explain what I'm feeling or what I need. Or then show me, I interrupted gently. Jake, you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know how to articulate everything perfectly. Just show me something in. His expression cracked open, vulnerable and raw and beautiful. He cupped my face in both hands, thumbs brushing my cheekbones, and when he kissed me this time it was different, deeper, more certain, like he'd made some kind of decision with himself and was finally committed to it. I kissed him back with months of pent-up longing, my hands finding their way to his bare chest. Feeling his heartbeat racing under my palms, this kiss was everything the first one wasn't. Urgent, desperate, full of need and want, and the bone-deep relief of finally being able to touch each other the way we'd wanted to. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. I want you, Jake whispered. And the raw honesty in his voice made me shiver. God, Adrian, I want you so much. It terrifies me. I want you too, I confessed. I have for so long. Jake pulled back slightly, his eyes searching mine in the darkness. Come to bed with me, not to sleep. I mean, if you want to sleep, that's fine, but I need you close tonight. Need to hold you. Need to know this is real. My answer was to take his hand and let him lead me down the hallway to his Bedroom, a space I'd been in dozens of times before, but never like this. Never with this kind of anticipation humming. Between us, Jake's bedroom was illuminated only by the soft glow from the street lights outside, casting everything in shades of blue and silver. His bed was unmade, covers tangled from his restless attempts at sleep, and the sight of it, this intimate glimpse into his private space, made something in my chest tighten with affection. He closed the door behind us, not for privacy since we were alone, but like he was sealing us into this moment, protecting it from the outside world. Then he turned to me, and in his eyes I saw the same mixture of want and nervousness that I felt. "I've never done this before," Jake said. "Quietly been with a man, any of it." "I know," I replied, stepping closer. "We can go slow, we can stop anytime, there's no pressure, Jake." "That's just it though," he said, reaching for me, pulling me against him. "I don't want to go slow. I've been going slow for months, denying this, fighting it. I'm done running from what I feel." He kissed me again, and this time there was no hesitation, no tentative exploration. His hands slid down my back, pulling me closer until our bodies were flush against each other, and I could feel every plane and angle of him through the thin fabric of our clothes. My hands mapped the terrain of his chest and shoulders, muscles shifting under warm skin, and Jake made a sound low in his throat that sent heat pooling in my stomach. We stumbled backward toward the bed, mouths never breaking contact, hands growing bolder, more confident. We fell onto the mattress together, Jake pulling me on top of him, his hands sliding under my t-shirt to touch bare skin. The sensation made both of us gasp, and for a moment we just stayed like that, breathing hard, looking at each other with wonder and desire, and something deeper that neither of us had named yet. "Adrian," Jake breathed, his hands spanning my rib cage, thumbs brushing the sensitive skin just below my chest. "Tell me what you want, tell me what feels good." I leaned down to kiss him again, slower this time, pouring months of longing into it. "This feels good," I murmured against his lips. "You feel good? Everything about this feels right, Jake." We explored each other with growing confidence. Shirts disappeared. Hands learned new territories. Mouths discovered sensitive places that made the other gasp or shiver or grip tighter. Jake was attentive and eager, asking questions when he wasn't sure, letting me guide him, and the trust implicit in that, his willingness to be vulnerable, to learn, to trust me with this part of himself, was almost overwhelming. "Is this okay?" Jake kept asking, and every time I assured him it was more than okay, he'd grow bolder, more confident in his touch. We didn't go all the way. Both of us understood without saying it that tonight was about intimacy and connection more than any physical act. Instead, we lay tangled together in his bed, skin against skin, hearts beating in sync, learning the geography of each other's bodies and souls. At some point, as the first hints of dawn started coloring the sky outside his window, Jake pulled me impossibly closer, his face buried in my neck. "I think I'm falling in love with you," he whispered against my skin. "No, that's not right. I think I've already fallen. I just didn't know what to call it until now." Tears stung my eyes, but they were good tears, happy tears. I turned in his arms so we were face to face, so he could see my expression when I said, "I love you too, I have for so long." Jake's smile was radiant, transformative. He kissed me softly, sweetly, then pulled me back against his chest, wrapping around me like he was trying to merge our bodies into one. "Stay," he murmured, already half asleep. "Don't go back to your room. Just stay." "I'm not going anywhere," I promised, meaning it in every way that mattered. We fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, the anxieties and uncertainties of the past months finally giving way to something simple and profound. Two people who loved each other, choosing to be brave enough to see where that love could lead. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the warm, solid weight of Jake's arm across my waist. For a moment I lay perfectly still, afraid that moving might shatter this perfect bubble we'd created. But then Jake stirred behind me, his arm tightening, pulling me back against his chest. "Morning," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep, sending pleasant shivers down my spine. "Morning," I replied, turning in his arms to face him. Jake looked different in the morning light, softer somehow, more open, with his guard completely down. He was looking at me with such open affection that it made my breath catch. "No regrets?" I asked quietly, needing to hear it. "Not a single one," Jake replied immediately, firmly. "You just regret that we waited so long," I admitted. Jake laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Yeah, we were pretty stupid about that, weren't we?" "Monumentally," I agreed, grinning. We stayed in bed for another hour, talking about everything and nothing: his fears about coming out to his parents, my concerns about whether this would change the comfortable dynamic we'd built as roommates, what we wanted our relationship to look like going forward. It wasn't all easy conversation, but it was honest, and that felt like the most important thing. "I don't have all the answers yet," Jake admitted at one point. "I don't know what label fits me, if I'm gay or bi or something else entirely. But I know that what I feel for you isn't conditional on figuring that out. You're not an experiment or a phase. You're it for me, Adrian. You're it for me too," I said simply. Eventually, the real world intruded, both our phones buzzing with notifications, the smell of Saturday morning coffee from the cafe downstairs drifting through the windows. We got up, shared a shower that was both intimate and slightly awkward in the best way, and made breakfast together. It felt different now. Every casual touch carried new weight, every smile held secret meaning. We'd crossed a threshold and there was no going back, and honestly, neither of us wanted to. The weeks that followed were a study in learning how to be together, not just roommates, not just friends, but something new and undefined and entirely ours. We navigated the shift with surprising ease, though not without occasional stumbles. Jake moved slowly into the public aspects of being out. He told Emily the full story first, and she video called within hours to tell me, with her toddler babbling in the background, that she was absolutely delighted. And when were we coming to visit? His close friends from college were next, and their reactions ranged from surprise to honestly, we were wondering when you'd figure it out. The hardest conversation was with his parents. I wasn't there for that call, but I heard it through the wall, Jake's voice rising and falling. Long silences, and at one point what might have been tears. When he emerged an hour later, his eyes were red, but his expression was relieved. "They need time," he told me, letting me pull him into a hug. "But they'll come around." My dad said something about just wanting me to be happy, and my mom asked if you were treating me well. "And what did you say?" I asked. I said, "You treat me like I'm the most important person in your world," Jake replied, smiling against my shoulder. "Because you do." I introduced Jake to my extended friend group at Maya's Halloween party. We went as characters from The Princess Bride, Jake as Wesley, me as Prince Humperdinck, which got us a lot of laughs and knowing looks when people realized we'd intentionally not gone with the obvious romantic pairing. Maya pulled me aside at one point, her eyes suspiciously bright. "He looks at you like you hung the moon," she said. "I'm happy for you, Adrian. You deserve this." "Thanks for not giving up on me," I replied. "For pushing me to be honest about how I felt. That's what best friends do," she said, hugging me tight. Work continued as normal. I landed more clients. Jake got a promotion, and we fell into comfortable rhythms of supporting each other's professional lives while building something beautiful in our personal one. Our apartment transformed from a shared space to a home filled with inside jokes and stolen kisses, and the kind of domestic comfort that made even mundane tasks feel special. But of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. About 6 weeks into our relationship, if we were calling it that, which we hadn't officially but implicitly were, Jake had what I later understood was a minor panic attack. We'd been at a local sports bar, watching a baseball game with some of his work colleagues. I'd been careful about physical contact in public, not wanting to push Jake beyond his comfort zone, but at one point, caught up in the excitement of a home run, I'd squeezed his shoulder without thinking, a gesture that could have been friendly but in context felt more intimate. One of his colleagues, a guy named Brad who worked in sales, had noticed. "You two seem close," he'd said with a knowing smirk that could have been innocent or loaded. Jake had frozen completely, his whole body going rigid. "We're roommates," he'd said, his voice flat in a way I'd never heard before. The rest of the evening, Jake had been distant, withdrawn. In the Uber home, he'd sat pressed against the opposite door, staring out the window in silence. My stomach had churned with anxiety, but I'd given him space, waiting for him to be ready to talk. When we got home, Jake went straight to his bedroom, not ours, not the one we'd been sharing almost every night for the past month and a half, but his original room that had become more of a storage space. The door closed with a quiet click that felt like a wall slamming between us. I stood in the hallway for a long moment, torn between giving him the space he clearly needed and not letting fear drive a wedge between us. Finally, I knocked softly. "Jake, can we talk?" Silence. "I'm coming in," I said, gently opening the door. Jake was sitting on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, shoulders hunched with tension. He looked up when I entered, and the expression on his face, fear, shame, confusion, all mixed together, broke my heart. "I panicked," he said simply. "Brad made that comment and suddenly I was terrified of what people would think, of being seen, of everything changing at work, and I froze." "Adrian, I couldn't." "Hey," I interrupted, crossing the room to kneel in front of him, taking his hands in mine. "It's okay to be scared. This is all new for you. You don't have to be perfectly comfortable with everything right away." "But I hurt you," Jake said, anguish in his voice. "I saw your face when I said we were just roommates, like that, like what we have doesn't matter." It stung, I admitted honestly. "But Jake, I understand, coming out isn't linear. There will be moments when you're not ready, and that's okay. What's not okay is shutting me out when you're scared." Jake pulled his hands from mine to rub his face roughly. "I don't know how to do this, how to be comfortable with people knowing how to navigate being gay or bi, or whatever I am, in spaces where I've always been the straight guy. It's like I don't know who I'm supposed to be anymore." "You're supposed to be Jake," I said firmly, "the same person you've always been. The only thing that's changed is that you're being honest about who you love. That doesn't erase everything else about you." "But what if it does?" Jake's voice cracked. "What if people only see that now? What if my family can't get past it? What if I lose opportunities at work because suddenly I'm the gay guy instead of just Jake?" These were legitimate fears, and I couldn't dismiss them with empty platitudes. The reality was that coming out could have consequences, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. "Some of that might happen," I acknowledged. "Some people might treat you differently. It's not fair, but it's possible. But Jake, you're also not alone in this. You have me, you have Emily, you have friends who already know and love you exactly as you are. And more than that, you have yourself. Version of yourself that's finally being honest." Jake was quiet for a long moment, absorbing my words. Then he slid off the bed to kneel in front of me, cupping my face in his hands. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I pulled away. I'm sorry I made you feel like you don't matter when you're the person who matters most." "I know you're sorry," I said softly, "and I forgive you. But Jake, we need to figure out how to communicate when you're scared instead of shutting down. I can't help you through the hard moments if you lock me out." "You're right," Jake agreed. "I know you're right. It's just old habits. When things get overwhelming, I tend to isolate. It's something I've always done." "Then let's work on new habits," I suggested. Together, Jake pulled me into a tight hug, and we stayed like that on the floor of his bedroom for a long time. When we finally pulled apart, something had shifted. A deeper understanding, a commitment to working through the hard things instead of running from them. "Come back to our room?" Jake asked quietly. "I don't want to sleep alone tonight." "Our room?" I repeated, liking the sound of it. "Yeah, let's go to our room." After that night, Jake made a conscious effort to be more open, to push past his comfort zone in small, manageable ways. He started holding my hand when we walked through our neighborhood. He changed his relationship status on social media and posted a photo of us together, his arm around my shoulders, both of us grinning at the camera. The caption was simple: "Happy with this one." The responses were overwhelmingly positive, though there were a few conspicuous silences from people he'd known in high school. A couple of unfollows, each one hurt, I could tell, but he didn't let them define the experience. "You know what's weird?" Jake said one evening as we scrolled through the comments together. "I spent all this time being terrified of what people would think, and most of them are just happy for me. like it's not the huge dramatic thing I'd built it up to be in my head. Coming out is different for everyone, I said. You're lucky to have such a supportive circle. I know, Jake agreed, kissing my temple, and I don't take that for granted. Thanksgiving approached, bringing with it a decision that had been weighing on both of us: whether Jake would go home to Michigan for the holiday and whether I'd go with him. I want you there, Jake had said when we first discussed it, but I also don't want to put you in an uncomfortable position if my parents are still adjusting. Have you talked to them since you came out? I asked a few times. Mom's been trying. She asks about you. Dad's been quieter, but he hasn't shut me out either. I think they just don't know what to say. Then maybe meeting me will help. I suggested give them something concrete instead of just an abstract idea of their son being in a relationship with a man. Jake had looked both terrified and hopeful. You'd really do that? Meet the parents this soon? Jake, I love you, I said simply. Meeting your family isn't some scary obligation. I want to know the people who made you who you are. So we'd booked flights to Grand Rapids, packed our bags, and tried not to be too nervous about what awaited us. Jake's family home was a charming two-story colonial in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and traditions ran deep. His mother, Carol, answered the door, a petite woman with Jake's eyes and a warm, if slightly nervous, smile. Jacob, she said, pulling him into a hug. Then she turned to me and I saw her take a small breath, steadying herself. Adrian, it's wonderful to finally meet you properly. Thank you for having me, Mrs. Mitchell, I said, accepting her offered hug. Please call me Carol, she insisted, ushering us inside where the smell of cinnamon and roasting turkey filled the air. Jake's father, Robert, was in the living room watching football. He stood when we entered, a tall man with graying hair and Jake's strong jawline. His handshake was firm, his expression carefully neutral. Adrian, he said simply, welcome. The first few hours were awkward, everyone trying too hard to be normal. But then Emily arrived with her family, sweeping in like a force of nature, hugging me like we were old friends, and immediately diffusing the tension with stories about her toddler's latest antics. Mom, Dad, stop being weird, she said bluntly at one point. Jake's happy. Adrian clearly makes him happy. That's literally all that matters. Carol had the grace to look. She grinned. We're not being weird, we're just adjusting, Robert finished. He looked at Jake, then at me. It's not what we expected. But Emily's right, you seem good together, and Jake, you seem lighter than you've been in years. Jake's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight. I am lighter because I'm finally being honest about who I am. The conversation that followed wasn't easy. There were questions, some awkward moments, and a few comments that revealed the learning curve Jake's parents were on, but there was also genuine effort, real love, and a willingness to try. At one point, Carol pulled me aside while we were doing dishes after dinner. I need you to know something, she said, her hands busy with soapy plates. When Jake first told us about you, I was scared, not because you're a man, well, maybe a little because of that, but mostly because I was scared of what it would mean for his life, the challenges he'd face, the judgment. As a parent, you want to protect your kids from pain. I understand that, I said quietly, but then I saw the photos he'd posted and the way he looked at you in them, Carol continued, and I realized that trying to protect him from being who he is would cause more pain than anything else could. So I'm learning. And Adrian, I can see that you love my son. I do, I confirmed very much. Then that's enough, Carol said, offering me a genuine smile. Welcome to the family. Later that night, Jake and I lay in his childhood bedroom, him and his old twin bed, me on an air mattress on the floor, talking in whispers like teenagers sneaking around. That went better than I expected, Jake admitted. Not perfect, but better. Your mom is really trying, I said, and Emily's amazing. Yeah, she is, Jake agreed fondly. Then after a pause, thank you for being here, for doing this with me. I know it wasn't easy. Being with you is the easiest thing I've ever done, I replied honestly. Everything else is just details we'll figure out together. I heard Jake shift in his bed, then felt him slide down onto the air mattress beside me, squeezing into the small space. What are you doing? I laughed quietly. I've gotten used to falling asleep next To you, Jake murmured, wrapping around me. Twin bed, air mattress, I don't care, I just want you close. We fell asleep like that, cramped and uncomfortable but together, and when Carol found us the next morning, both of us having rolled off the air mattress and onto the floor in the night, she just smiled and quietly closed the door. The months between Thanksgiving and New Year's passed in a blur of joy and normally and the quiet building of a life together. Jake came out at work officially, and while there were a few awkward moments, his boss had been supportive and HR had been professional. Brad from sales had actually apologized for making Jake uncomfortable at the sports bar, admitting he'd suspected and was just trying to be an ally, albeit clumsily. We celebrated Christmas with my family. My mom, who'd known I was gay since high school and had been impatiently waiting for me to find someone, took to Jake immediately. My dad gave him the standard "don't hurt my son" speech, which Jake had handled with such earnest sincerity that even my usually stoic father had cracked a smile. We'd established routines: Sunday morning farmers market, Tuesday night cooking together, Thursday evenings for separate time with our own friends. We'd learned each other's pet peeves and comfort needs. We'd had a few more fights, nothing major, mostly the normal friction of two people learning to share space and decisions, and learned how to fight fair and make up honestly. And now it was New Year's Eve and Maya was throwing a massive party at her loft downtown. We got ready together, Jake in dark jeans and a blue sweater that made his eyes impossible, me in black everything because some aesthetic choices never change. You look good, Jake said, coming up behind me as I fixed my hair in the bathroom mirror, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. You look better, I replied, leaning back against him. I love you, Jake said, meeting my eyes in the mirror. I don't say it enough, but I do. You've changed my entire life, Adrian, made it bigger and brighter and more honest. I love you too, I said, turning in his arms to face him properly. You've changed my life just as much, given me everything I didn't know I was allowed to want. We kissed slow and sweet until Jake's phone alarm went off, reminding us we needed to leave or we'd be late. The party was everything Maya's parties always were: loud, crowded, full of people we loved and people we'd never met but would probably be friends with. By the end of the night, we danced, drank just enough to be pleasantly buzzed, and existed in that perfect space where everything felt possible. As midnight approached, Maya gathered everyone on her rooftop terrace. The city stretched out around us, lights glittering like earthbound stars, and in the distance, we could see the preparations for the fireworks display over the lake. 1 minute, someone called out, and the countdown began. Jake pulled me close, his arms around me, swaying slightly to the music still drifting from inside. You know what I realized, he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear over the noise. What? A year ago I was someone completely different, living a half-life, pretending to be satisfied with what I had, and now, he gestured to the party, to the friends, to the city, to us. Now I have everything, and it's because I was brave enough to fall. We both were, I corrected. 10, 9, 8, the countdown swelled around us. So here's to being brave, Jake said, his eyes locked on mine. To taking risks, to choosing love over fear. 7, 6, 5, to new beginnings, I added. And letting the right person change your life. 2, to us, Jake whispered, one happy new year. And as fireworks exploded over the lake and the rooftop erupted in cheers and celebrations, Jake kissed me like we were the only two people in the world, like the past year of confusion and discovery and falling in love had all been leading to this moment, like every choice we'd made had been the right one. Because it had brought us here together, brave enough to build something beautiful. When we finally broke apart, both grinning like fools, Maya appeared beside us with champagne. To the happy couple she toasted, her eyes sparkling with genuine joy. May you have a lifetime of midnights like this. To midnights like this, Jake agreed, clinking his glass against hers and then mine. We stood on that rooftop surrounded by friends and possibility, and I felt a profound sense of rightness settle into my bones. This was my life now, this beautiful, messy, honest life with someone who loved me enough to face his fears. Someone who'd pulled me into his bed and into his heart and changed everything. The thing about transformative moments is that they don't stay transformative forever. Eventually, the extraordinary becomes ordinary in the best possible way. The life-changing becomes simply life. It had been a year and 3 months since that first night on the couch when Jake had told me he couldn't stop thinking about me, a year since that New Year's Eve kiss on Maya's rooftop, and in that time we'd built something steady and real. We'd moved to a bigger apartment. Still roommates, still best friends, but now with only one bedroom because neither of us could imagine sleeping separately anymore. Jake had fully embraced his identity as bisexual, finding community and comfort in that label. He'd even started volunteering with an LGBTQ+ youth organization, mentoring kids who were struggling with coming out. I wish I'd had someone like you when I was figuring things out, a 17-year-old named Marcus had told Jake at one of the meetings I'd tagged along to. Jake had gotten a little terrary, and later in the car home he'd said it was the most meaningful thing anyone had ever said to him. I'd gotten a promotion, Jake had switched to a company with better values and work-life balance, and we'd adopted a rescue cat named Waffles who had immediately claimed Jake as his favorite human, much to my mock offense. We were planning a trip to visit Emily in Boston. We'd started talking about maybe moving in together, officially getting a mortgage, buying a place, making that adult commitment that felt both terrifying and inevitable. We argued about whose turn it was to do dishes and whether we could afford to splurge on the fancy coffee beans and what movie to watch on Friday nights. We were normal, beautifully, perfectly normal, but sometimes on quiet Sunday mornings when we'd wake up tangled together, sun streaming through the windows, Waffles purring between us, Jake would prop himself up on one elbow and look at me with that same wonder he'd had in the beginning. What? I'd ask, smiling, just remembering he'd say, that night I pulled you into my bed and everything changed. Best decision you ever made, I'd tease. Best decision we ever made, he'd correct, leaning down to kiss me, being brave enough to fall. And lying there in our home, in our life, with our future stretching out before us, full of possibility and promise. I had to agree, being brave enough to fall, to trust, to love, to be honest about who we were and what we wanted had given us everything. The extraordinary had become ordinary and the ordinary had become extraordinary, and somehow that felt like the greatest magic of